The indie game scene has quickly become an industry willing to take risks and flesh out ideas that were started in the past while improving and iterating upon them. Because of this, you end up with really unique games that the AAA industry is too afraid to tackle due to the amounts of risks that come with it. Hence why there are so few new IPs, and why the industry has felt so stale over the past few generations. And remember that thing I said about combining modern and retro gaming mechanics and sensibilities? These days, the only industry willing to take those risks and run with it is the indie scene. The result is a game like Dead Cells, which takes the premise of a Metroidvania and smashes it together with roguelike gaming mechanics into what they call a roguevania, and somehow not only does it work, and work exceptionally well, but it has somehow escalated Dead Cells into one of the most addicting roguelikes I've ever played. Dead Cells, like any roguelike, is a game about failure. It's a game about making mistakes, understanding what went wrong, and applying that knowledge to your next run. It's a game about understanding what it means to build skill through simply playing the game and being rewarded based on the results of how far you get as opposed to your last attempt. It's a concept that has been part of video games for years, up until the point where games became so mechanically dense that the idea of being sent to the start after death in most games today would be immediately shamed and made an example of. And for good reason. Dead Cells establishes its own identity by allowing the player to focus on a handful of features: movement, enemy patterns, and the type of weapons they want to use. These three tenets of gameplay is exactly where Dead Cells truly shines, and had put it on many Game of the Year lists even during its early access. Similar to what I mentioned with games like Iconoclast, Dead Cells' moment-to-moment gameplay has a very fast-paced flow to it. Jumping from platform to platform and completely destroying enemies in your way creates a very cathartic feeling of zen, where everything around you just sort of melts away as you find yourself completely taken in by just how fluidly the game moves and how good it makes you look doing it. But this isn't some sort of power trip, as the game doesn't simply let you walk all over it. It kept me on my toes simply due to the fact that enemies will quickly show you the error of your ways if you're not paying attention. Even the weakest of foes can put a serious dent in your health should you give them the chance. And that's just in the first area alone. But the weapons in Dead Cells complement the pacing of the game and its overall speed. Melee weapons like swords have quick 3-hit strings that do enough damage to put smaller enemies down in seconds, allowing you to keep pressing on and keep your momentum going. While ranged weapons such as bows require you to stop for just a second to let loose an arrow or two to quickly dispatch enemies and move on. It's worth noting because in most games that allow the choice of melee and ranged weapons, I usually find myself preferring one over the other. However, in the case of Dead Cells, I found both weapons equally viable where I didn't have a preference. Most of the time I would just take both. Enemy patterns are carefully telegraphed to give the player a few moments to figure out just what to do to counter it. Have a shield, parry or deflect an attack. No shield, simply dodge roll out of the way and avoid taking damage completely. Which opens an enemy up to situations like back attacks, where weapons such as daggers really shine. And all of this even applies to bosses, which are the true tests of everything you've gathered, the build you've created, and the skills you've learned. But if you fail, you don't restart empty-handed, as the game slowly trickles out more mechanics to help you on your next run over the course of simply playing the game. I never felt completely frustrated at a loss when I died. I would jump back in from scratch with a new weapon or ability and the knowledge of why I died to begin with. Then there's hidden abilities that allow you to find shortcuts through levels, different routes to take with different endings, and you can see how this all builds up to an addicting experience. But make no mistake, Dead Cells is certainly no walk in the park, and I'm not sure if there's a number in existence to describe how many times I've died in my 30 hours spent with the game thus far. Then there's the environments that the game has you jumping and ground pounding your way through. And this is where the game's art style really comes through. Each area has a distinct atmosphere and finely crafted use of colors and effects to really give each area a unique feeling. This ranges from dark catacombs to dirty sewers to the rooftops of castles and so on. The game's lighting model really helps magnify that atmosphere as you walk across a moonlit bridge to fight a boss and watch how you and the boss occlude the moonlight and create shadows that dance across the area, or the reflections in the water just below. It helps drive home the sense of progression when you're inside a majestic castle, an incredible score is playing, and the environment just screams that you're nearly at the end of your journey. It's an art form in games that has gone underappreciated as the industry continues to drive the idea of games needing to be more cinematic. And it's something I haven't really seen well implemented in games since the Streets of Rage series in the 90s. Dead Cells is an experience that takes the roguelike concept and shakes it up in a way that was needed for a very long time. Instead of sticking to just the run, fail, rinse, and repeat routine, it rewards you for taking time to explore and find secrets that will help you in the long run. It's a roguelike that allows you to choose your tools of destruction that work best for you and doesn't punish you for not picking the tried and true guaranteed ways to win or be lucky enough to find it. It sets a standard for roguelikes going forward and has become another of many games this year that I go back to and lose countless hours in. It's a testament of how finely crafted game design can overcome the limitations of the genres it pulls from, which is something to be lauded about and recognized for many years to come. And it's why it easily places itself in the second place spot of my favorite games this year.